College is a little bit like Elvis. That's not a Zen koan, that's the title of my commencement address. Bruce Springsteen held his first concert when he was 7 years old. The whole neighborhood came. His rented guitar shone in the sun. He whooped and he hollered, he danced and he shimmied. He pointed at the sky and he implored the audience to scream. Up until that point, Springsteen's life had, by his own account, been an endless loop of school, homework, church, green beans. School, homework, church, green beans. But then, as he tells it in his one-man show on Broadway, in a blinding flash of sanctified light, a new kind of man, just a kid from the southern sticks, split the world in two. The revolution had been televised right under the noses of the powers that be, and remarkably, they had not shut it down. The fateful event took place on a Sunday night in 1956, and young Bruce, living somewhere in nowhere, New Jersey, suddenly knew that there was more. More life, more love, more hope, more truth, more power, more soul. It was Springsteen's Elvis moment, and he didn't waste it. He says of it, I listened, I believed, I heard a mighty call to action. College, you see, is a little bit like Elvis. James Carville, the political commentator, once said that America never tasted the same after Elvis. The same is true for college. If you did it right, your life should never taste the same. You will have had a set of experiences, collected a group of friends, read a stack of books, had a million arguments, failed a zillion times, written a paper or two, succeeded often enough that you made it to this day. Congratulations. Listen, I hope your time in college here was full of Elvis moments, moments when the world feels new and full of possibility, moments when you listened, believed, felt a mighty call to action. It's been a quarter century since I was an undergraduate, and yet my own such moments feel fresh as if they were yesterday. The first time that I read the poetry of William Carlos Williams, the first time I heard the name Dorothy Day, the week I made my first gay friend, the moment I heard the story of Ruby Bridges, the class where my professor posed the question, is Christopher Columbus really a hero? I'm in the full swing of middle age now, but those moments from my undergraduate years are the deep waters in my spiritual well. I find myself returning to them over and over for guidance, for nourishment, for a reminder of what it felt like when a poem, a story, a question, an insight could be like seeing Elvis on a Sunday night in 1956 and feeling like the world had just split in two. How do you keep that feeling after you cross this stage and gather your degree? What lessons and themes will you carry with you from your years at Augustana? Here's my list. First, I hope you learned the electric combination of imagined possibility and disciplined work ethic. Iris Murdoch writes, "Man is a creature who makes pictures of himself and then comes to resemble those pictures." I hope that all of you got a glimpse of a future you here that could never have crossed your mind in high school. You as someone who starts a global company or a protest against one. You as someone who writes novels or an essay that states the novel is dead. And then comes the discipline, the work required to become the picture you just imagined of yourself. Remember the 7-year-old Springsteen headlining that first concert in his backyard? All the whooping and dancing and shimmying. Note, he never actually plays the guitar. Elvis had made it look so easy. When Springsteen held his first guitar in his hand, he kind of thought it might play itself. The job of the musician was to work on looking cool. But once he realized that he wasn't satisfied with the picture of being a musician, he actually wanted to be one, he started to put in the work. He spent Friday nights watching local bands play gigs at YMCAs and high school dances. He would elbow his way up to the front of the stage and stand in front of the lead guitar player, just watching what he did, and then would go home and spend the rest of his Friday night trying that out. The secret to being Bruce Springsteen has two parts. You imagine a character for yourself, and then you work like hell to become that. I hope somebody shared that secret with you while you were here in college, and that you bring both parts with you into the great beyond. Second, I hope that you remember that nothing you either love or hate just drops from the sky or rises from the ground. Everything comes from somewhere. Everything has a history. Think about Elvis. Here's a guy who grew up in the poor neighborhoods of Tupelo, Mississippi. His daddy went to Parchman Prison for writing bad checks. As a teenager, Elvis winds his way to Memphis, works as an electrician. He spends his nights and weekends listening to music in churches and nightclubs in the black part of town. When he finally gets his shot at Sun Studios, the owner, Sam Phillips, takes one look at him and thinks this is just one more pretty white kid who wants to be Frank Sinatra. As the engineers set up the recording equipment, Elvis tools around on his guitar, hits a blue note or two. Sam Phillips says, "What was that?" Elvis says, "Nothing, I'm just messing." Sam Phillips says, "No, tell me what you were playing." Elvis confesses, "Well, that's the music I really like." Sam Phillips says, "That's the music I really like." Black music is the black response to being terrorized and traumatized. We will share and spread some soothing sweetness against the backdrop of a dark catastrophe. That's Cornel West on black music. And that's what Elvis absorbs as a kid. A new chapter in American culture began in Sun Studios that day, but it was part of a much longer story. You see, those Delta bluesmen that Elvis loved and learned from, well, they got some of their inspiration from the field chants of slaves. Many of those slaves came from Muslim-majority nations where the sound of the Islamic call to prayer, the adhan, would have rung in their ears and settled their souls 5 times a day. Thich Nhat Hanh says, "The poet can see a cloud in this piece of paper." If you remember that everything comes from somewhere, you will hear the adhan when you listen to Springsteen's Born in the USA. Knowing that everything has a history means not just learning about that past, but reckoning with it and deciding what role you are going to play in the next chapter. It is never a straightforward narrative. Of American history, Springsteen says that all of us have to struggle with the blood and the confusion and the pride and the shame and the grace that comes with birthplace. The third thing that I hope stays with you from college is those intense moments of reflecting on identity and diversity as it relates to both you as an individual and to the various concentric circles of community to which you contribute and belong. Again, Springsteen. Listen to those early albums. Here you have a young Bruce Springsteen who will kill to break free. He is born to run, to race in the streets, to get out of this place, to exit St. Mary's Gate, declare his own personal Independence Day. How things change. Nowadays, Bruce Springsteen lives 10 miles from the house where he grew up. He says that the most meaningful part of his life is not being a rock star, but being a dad and a husband. He writes about the comfort he gets from church bells chiming, the same church bells that he dismissed as a kid. He calls his musical career a long and noisy prayer, not ultimately about himself, but about understanding the people around him. He leads the audience in the Our Father. Think about the various characters Springsteen conjures in his songs. He sees the decent cop who lets his criminal brother escape, the ex-con doing his best to walk the straight line, the returned Vietnam vet seething in the darkness on the edge of town. Tom Joad is a Mexican migrant worker. The high school hero is now in late middle age. The innocent West African immigrant is shot 41 times because of the color of his American skin. He sings these songs in such a way that we not only identify with the characters we like and resemble, we learn something about the ones we dislike and consider alien. If Bruce Springsteen didn't exist, America would have to create him because he is so essential to our national identity. And you know what story Springsteen chooses to tell? The song that he sings? That if you didn't exist, America would have to create you. Because what's distinct about American identity is that it regards each person on this sacred ground as necessary. The magic trick that Bruce Springsteen performs is to make a random assortment of individuals feel like a community, a nation. That's why America is a potluck, not a melting pot, a sing-along, not a solo, an improvisational jazz show, not a strictly ordered symphony. If our people, in all their motley variety, don't contribute, well, then the nation doesn't feast. It is only in understanding our collective story that the ultimate meaning of our individual stories are revealed. And it is only in the gathering of our individual stories that we have a collective story at all. South Africans call this Ubuntu. We become people through other people. And this, in the final analysis, is why college matters so much to the student, to the nation, to the world. Because every Elvis moment that happened here slips into your back pocket when you leave, and you pull them out not just when you need a reminder, but when the world needs you to perform that magic trick to make it feel like a community. So when you are out there healing, teaching, building, helping, and you find yourself quoting something you read here at Augustana, or recalling an insight of a classmate or a professor, or revisiting a realization that you had during a service learning project, remember this place and these years. Be grateful for your time in Graceland. Thank you.